Oh, welcome back, everybody. I'm glad you guys are joining us today. I appreciate you guys been part of this little series I've had with Rob coming on, talking about a couple different topics. Maybe we'll make this more of a monthly thing where he'll come in and do a couple videos with me and talk a couple about some of the topics that are on hand. But we're going to end today's series with one of the biggest questions because Trump continues to tease it. He just had a huge rally in Miami where he had Marco Rubio attending, and that's possibly a VP pick for him. But did not announce. Maybe he will announce at the RNC. I don't know, but that's why we have Rob here with us, joining us from Rob Noerr's channel, Normal America. And of course, we have Rob here, very celebrated debater and also a guest on Tim Pool's podcast. It's great to have you here today, Rob, to weigh in on this topic.
Thank you. It's always an honor. Look forward to it.
Yeah. So, as you know, there is a plethora of individuals who has been vetted by the Trump campaign. You have Dr. Ben Carson, Marco Rubio, you got Tim Scott, you got Doug Burgum, and there was one other. Did I say Ben Carson? I might have said Ben Carson already.
Youngkin was someone that's been thrown around.
Youngkin has been thrown around, and of course there was a couple other ones. Vivek, people really like Vivek, and Ron DeSantis is another name that's been floated out there as well. Those are the first names I've mentioned are the ones that have been heavily hinted to. Trump just had this big rally. So my question to you, Rob, should he announce the VP now, or should he wait till after the convention or at the convention? And the second part to that question is, who do you feel would bring in the most voters by naming a VP that would maybe bring somebody in that wasn't maybe so sold on Trump, but they're like, hey, check it out. This guy he named VP may be the future of the party moving forward. And I'm going to consider, giving him a chance now. What do you think?
So as far as when he should announce, so we talked about previously, Trump's done a remarkably good job. Whoever's around Trump right now telling him to keep his mouth shut and leave the Democrats implode on themselves deserves a raise, because that person's crushing it. That's exactly what Trump should be doing. My feeling is, had the debate just gone so-so, that we would have already heard Trump's VP. He seemed to allude that that might be the case nearly after the debate. He's been wise not to change the news cycle, so I would wait until at least the convention. I think they'll probably name at the convention, which isn't that bad. It gave the Democrats and the people time to see what the Democratic Party is and what Joe Biden is. So that's around the right time, I think, to announce. You don't want to wait too late, but I think that's around the right time. Now, who to choose for VP is an interesting choice. The question you asked is arguably the most important question. Who's the best chance to help him shore up to get votes that maybe he wouldn't have got? For me, the obvious person isn't going to happen would be Ron DeSantis, because there are a lot of DeSantis people that aren't going to vote for Trump. And I think that even if they despise Trump, if DeSantis was the VP, that would be enough to get most of them on board. And I think that that would also assuage some of the sort of corporate donors that think that Trump's too risky. And I personally like DeSantis because I think that DeSantis is sort of a more polished version of Donald Trump. He's more of a policy wonk. His deficits are such that he's not as entertaining. He's not someone that a normie might look at and be as enthralled with as they are Donald Trump. But I think that he's very good at the things I like, such as attacking the corrupt media, having policies that I think are designed to go after that corruption. So I think he would be a good VP choice in both bringing in voters to help Trump win, and he's ideologically similar enough to Trump. The two reasons that that won't occur is, one, because I think there's some personal animosity, which you can't blame given the way that the primary shook out between the two. Trump would get over it. I don't know that DeSantis would so quickly. And it goes along with that if DeSantis is the second man right now, he seems more of like the type of guy that wants to be the top guy. And I think maybe he would perceive that as not helping his chances going forward in 2028 or forward if he was VP. Now, I would talk to DeSantis and disagree with that and say, just suck it up and be the guy behind the scenes for 4 years. But that would be my choice. I like someone's policies better, like Vivek. Now, I don't know if you could trust Vivek, but as far as his policies of getting rid of like 80% of the federal government workforce, et cetera, I think that's all good. Of abolishing the FBI, those are my biggest issues. I think that that's all good. But there's problems with him not being vetted yet. And so to pick him is risky at this point because he's sort of a newcomer and he seems to have changed his positions quite a lot in the past 4 years. So that could be risky. And I don't know that he brings in new voters. I think that the people that like Vivek are already going to vote for Trump. So I don't know that he's good for that choice. What Trump probably wants is someone who seems more moderate and is more palpable to traditional Republican, sort of the donor class. And so that's where you see someone like a Tim Scott or a Burgum. Burgum seems to be someone that would be comfortable with the old guard Republicans. Tim Scott checks a lot of boxes if they're trying to outreach to sort of minority communities, etc. But I don't really like either of them as far as if something happened to Trump, would they be people that I would want to see as president? I would say no. Ben Carson's a little better. He checks some of those same boxes. Ben Carson's incredibly loyal. He's one of the few people that Trump had surrounded himself with in his first administration that is stuck by him the whole time. And I think Ben Carson's an amazing story and an incredibly moral man. I would not mind seeing him as a VP candidate. I think J.D. Vance would be an excellent candidate. He's a strong fighter. I think that he's the type of person that is Trump-like, and you would like to see him in there if you like Trump, if something were to happen to Trump. However, I don't think he assuages the fears of people that necessarily are traditional Republicans that aren't really going to go with Trump. So if I was put on the spot and had to guess who it would be, I would say that you're likely to see it be Glenn Youngkin or Ben Carson. Youngkin is someone I think that really has shown in a swing state that he is someone that can be popular. He's someone that goes against the narratives of the Republican Party being incredibly racist. And he's someone that I think that a lot of traditional Republicans would like. I don't necessarily like that. I think that Trump's decision should be, who is the person that's not going to cost me because I think I could win this election? And I basically want an insurance policy because I assure you the establishment's going to come out knives out for Trump. Ironically, probably the best thing Joe Biden did was having Kamala Harris as his VP because it was the best insurance policy that he was not removed as president. Trump probably needs to think something like that. He needs to have a firebrand that's similar to him as vice president because if he puts a Doug Burgum, for example, in there, I think what ultimately is likely to happen is he'll face impeachment after impeachment, and establishment Republicans, the Mitch McConnell-esque, will be like, hey, if we get rid of this crazy populist, we could have Doug Burgum as president or one of the more establishment choices for VP. So that's ultimately what I think about it, but it's difficult, right? How do you choose someone that you think expands your voter base, but at the same time doesn't change the identity of what the administration would be?
Yeah, no, for sure. That's a great question because, of course, if you're choosing someone that's way too similar to you, you really don't bring in anything new. But if you bring in somebody so dissimilar to you, then you run the risk of what you said on the later half of it, facing impeachment. They're finally like, hey, that guy over there is not like him at all. Let's go ahead and bring him in and make him the vice president or make him the president. So yeah, this is a tricky scenario, and it's a lot more nuance to it than there is. Than a lot of us think. A lot of us. I know there's a lot of people within Trump world or MAGA world, if you would, that are Vivek Ramaswamy all the way. But as you mentioned, he is basically Trump Indian, right? So obviously he is very popular with the base. However, does that expand outward toward other voters? Again, I like Vivek Ramaswamy. I do have some issues with him. It wouldn't be a bad choice, but I think he'd be better served in the administration somewhere else. Ron DeSantis would be a phenomenal pick. Unfortunately, when you get two people who believe that they are the top, a lot of times they won't work together well. So yeah, I like the Ben Carson and even Glenn Youngkin. What you talked about, mentioned earlier. Ben Carson, my wife loves Ben Carson. He does bring in, may come some fears on our very first get together, may come some fears about the RNC's direction as far as traditional marriage and abortion. You get somebody who, like Ben Carson is, who is very traditional marriage, who is very anti-abortion, and who is a very staunch Christian on the ticket. It maybe quells a lot of fears within that segment of the base. So,
and it's not just, you're absolutely right on all that. Yeah. And another thing is almost the way he presents himself, almost diametrically opposed to Trump. Trump's this very bombastic. Ben Carson seems like the kind of guy, and it makes sense because he was a brain surgeon. He has a very calming, right? Like a calming demeanor. There's just something about the way he talks that he's so likable, and he's not brash. And I think that sort of dichotomy could serve Trump well, where it kind of assuages fears of like, this guy's a loose cannon. If Ben Carson's in the room with him, like, now Trump, it's all right. Let's think about the direction. And I think perceptually that stuff matters to some degree.
And right, and in between, I know a lot of people will try to draw comparisons between Mike Pence and Ben Carson. I just think Ben Carson, again, it was way more loyal to Trump than Mike Pence was, and whatever issues they had. I know a lot of people throw Mike Pence under the bus and et cetera, et cetera. However, I think Ben Carson is cut differently. I remember very vividly during one of the first debates where Ben Carson didn't hear his name called, and so he was standing there, and then finally they named Trump, but then Trump doesn't come out. He waits for Ben, and they come out together. If you remember that debate, everybody else passed by Ben, knowing that they had called his name and just walked by him, whereas in Trump stayed behind and waited for Ben to go out with him. So that was a good measure, and I think that really formed a good friendship and a bond that was much closer than maybe him and Mike Pence maybe had.
Yeah, and those moments, by the way, it's a little off topic, but those moments, you can't fake that. I think
No.
that all politicians to some degree are putting on a facade. The irony with Trump is those little moments, another little moment I think of is where he's getting off Air Force One and there's a downpour and the one Marine's hat blows off and he immediately runs over and grabs the hat. Those are things that you can't fake in real time. That moment with Ben Carson, another one is when he was told that Ruth Bader Ginsburg had passed away. Like, that's genuine on Trump. You might be sitting there thinking, oh boy, I get to pick another justice. But you could tell in the moment, he was like, that's sad to hear. And those sort of things are Trump's best moments, I think, that humanize him. And I agree with you. I think Ben Carson brings that out of him, not just from that moment, but also, to have someone that many Christians would trust as someone, even if you don't agree with all of his political beliefs, is a staunch Christian saying, no, I support this man and I think he's a good man. I think that goes a long way.
All right, so real quick, I'm going to put you on the spot. 10 seconds. Who is the VP? Mark it, book it down right now from Rob Noerr.
He's probably going to pick Burgum. There's been a lot of talk about it, and Burgum's one of the least people I would choose, so that's probably who we'll go with. Hope I'm wrong.
Well, that's awesome. Well, I've really enjoyed this series with you, talking about all these different topics. Rob, I appreciate you coming on and, of course, being a dear friend of mine as well. I wish nothing but the best for you and your family. Make sure you guys go check out Rob. Rob, could you tell them just a couple quick hits about you?
Yeah, Rob Noerr, consider myself a conservative populist, was a debater, lived in rural Pennsylvania my whole life. My big focus is corruption in government, and I focus on sort of issues that concern rural Americans. I think that we're mocked by almost every institution in this country, so I'm honored to be a rural American and to speak up for them. And groups that traditionally are bashed, like Christians or men or white people, I think that demonizing of these sorts of groups is one of the reasons our country is going in a poor direction. You can find me at Normal America with Rob Noerr on YouTube, or Rob Noerr, as you see it spelled there, on pretty much any other platform, Rumble, Twitch, or on X. It's always a pleasure to be on here with you, Frank, and hopefully we can do it more again in the future.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you again so much, Rob, and make sure you guys go subscribe, follow him, all those different places that he mentioned. Really great guy, and you won't be disappointed in the content that he puts out. Until next time, I'll see you guys a little later. Have a great day.